This is J-Ram.
And this is Billy.
And welcome to another edition of
Wow, That's Deep. And today we're going to be talking about the simulation hypothesis and whether or not our reality is in fact
The Matrix?
Sort of. Actually, let's start by talking about the Matrix, James. So, in the Matrix, what did we learn about the Matrix? What is the Matrix?
Well, the Matrix puts forth the hypothesis that our reality is nothing more than a computer simulation.
Yeah.
That we are, you were the one that taught me this, that it's not that way according to the directors. It's not how they wanted it. But the producers made it that we are basically batteries for this higher power or this computer that's much smarter than us.
Yeah.
And that the only way to keep us running and keep us from overthrowing the computer overlords is to make us believe they don't exist.
Yeah. Put us in a simulation so that we're placated to, keep living our seemingly worthless lives. Yeah. To supply power to the computer. But in the Matrix, we have this character, Neo, who is a hacker. And he knows a lot about, computer code and that sort of stuff. And if you notice, in the Matrix, he has a lot of books about, like Rene Descartes' ideas that, nothing that we perceive can really be proven to be real. The only thing that we can actually say that exists is ourselves. I think, therefore I am, because we think, and we're a thinking being, regardless if that's just a abstract mind out in space, or if it's our brain in our heads, or just consciousness in general. That's the only thing that we can say exists because we're actively thinking of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's where the concept of cogito ergo sum comes from, which is I think, therefore I am. That came from Rene Descartes. So extend that to the modern world, where we have these ever-increasing technological improvements with artificial intelligence or, computing power.
Virtual reality video games.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. It would be prudent to say that improvement is just going to keep getting better and better and better. So the basic concept of what we're talking about today, people, is that someday we're going to be able to create some sort of virtual reality that is indistinguishable from reality. And you literally would not be able to tell the difference between living right here, right now, versus living in that simulated reality.
And if we get to that point, maybe that means we're already there.
Yeah, that could have happened in the past.
Oh, geez, Rick, my brain.
So that's the trippy part. That's the wow, that's deep part of this.
It is like that episode, though.
What?
Where Rick has his battery for his ship.
Yeah.
And inside that battery is a world of aliens that are running on treadmills, basically.
Talking about Rick and Morty, is that what you said? Yeah.
It's like they're running on the treadmills to power his ship. And one of the scientists in the world that's in his battery creates batteries to do their jobs for them. And in that battery is yet another world.
Yeah.
It's just a layer upon a layer upon a layer.
Yeah. And that's how it could be. Because, in the Matrix, because we're going to basically be talking about the Matrix throughout this whole
It's a good pop culture reference point for this idea.
Yeah, just about everybody's seen the Matrix. If you haven't, stop this podcast, go watch the Matrix, and then come back and listen.
And this does not count as our review of the Matrix. That could come later.
Yeah, it could, because that's definitely before 2004. But something that you brought up about the Matrix was that originally the supercomputers created a utopia for us. Mm-hmm. And that we rejected that, but we didn't accept that as reality. Which I think that's a little bit bending of movie magic, that sort of stuff. Like, not really movie magic, but like just a plot device, really. Because if you think about it, if we were to create a simulation, where everything was utopian and perfect or whatever, the minds that are created in the simulation would have, if we consider that evolution is a part of that reality that was created, then we would have evolved in that world where everything was perfect. So we would have, I feel like we would have accepted that reality because it would have been the way our brains perceive it.
But if we're a simulation, why would the higher power, the race of aliens or supercomputers or whatever, make it where we suffer? Why would it be this way?
Well, I think that the reason is because maybe that is what the top base reality would be. Like, okay, so with simulation theory, you've got a biological reality. You've got something like what we perceive as what this is. I'm just going to assume that we are in a simulation for this example. So assuming that we're in a simulation, there's got to be something that's creating that simulation that's in it, regardless if that's yet another simulation. But even if you have simulation upon simulation upon simulation, there will be a top or base reality that is biological in nature. And I think that if you were an advanced civilization of some sort, that the simulations would be showing what that life would be like. Like, say that we wanted to create, like you said earlier before we started recording the podcast, you said, what if you made a simulation where like JFK was never assassinated? Like alternate history simulations or something like that.
Because that's a book I want to write. I want to interview historians and scientists and make a book of alternate histories to see what they theorize the world could be like if, say, the U.S. had won Vietnam, or, as you mentioned, JFK was never assassinated, the Twin Towers were never attacked. Like, how much of an effect would that have had on the history of the world?
It would have been very severe, I think.
Yeah, it'd just
like
be
the butterfly effect,
I would like to see what they think.
Yeah, so I think the reason why it's the way it is because maybe that's how things played out in their history.
So what you're saying is maybe they're not an alien race. Maybe they're just whatever comes after us.
Yeah,
maybe we're their ancestors, and they're just playing out to see how they got to where they are.
Yeah. And this isn't something that's to be taken really seriously. We mentioned in a previous podcast about Newton's flaming laser sword. This is a philosophical kind of conundrum that you just like thinking about. So
because this theory cannot be proven or disproven. So don't, like me, walk around going, it's all meaningless. I'm not even real. I don't exist. I'm some computer simulation. Some jack-off is just watching me suffer and laughing because
like
his little sim is having a hard time getting out of a pool with no ladder. I don't like this theory, all right? It makes me very upset.
Why?
Because I want to be real. I want to exist. I want to truly be alive, and if I'm a simulation, I'm not alive. It's like Detroit Become Human, which is an amazing video game I played that Billy let me borrow. If any of you have the ability to try it, I would highly recommend you play it. It's extremely addictive, and it's a great game because it makes you think
Detroit
of many
Become
of these
Human
things.
Was more about like the personhood of artificial intelligence. Like, is there a point that we can create a robot that becomes a person?
Yes, but here's how it relates to this.
What? How?
If we are a simulation, are we self-aware? Is there a point where we will become self-aware that we are a simulation?
I think that
if we're a simulation, why are we able to think as a simulation that we could be a simulation? It seems like that would create a paradox that would crash the simulation.
I don't think it would crash the simulation. I think that you're talking about a computing power that would have like infinite possibilities built into it. I don't think that I don't know. We don't know. We're just in the 21st century, but like it could be possible that you could create some sort of like quantum-based computer that could actually control every single cell in your body and know where every single atom in your body is at any given time.
Whoa.
I mean, in that sense, if you're simulating a brain, you have to give it self-awareness. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an intelligence.
That could be why we have the multiverse theory too.
Yeah,
it's because it's kind of like an idea. All simulations, like the computer is running simultaneous simulations. Okay, this is what would happen if this person turned left instead of right. Here's what would have happened if they turned right instead of left. Here's what would have happened if they kept going straight.
Yeah,
and they all exist.
Well, that also translates to quantum superposition. If you have a subatomic particle, like say a quark, and it has a relative spin, like say it's spinning clockwise.
Okay.
If you're looking at a quark, you can't tell whether it's spinning one way or another. You won't know until you measure it. And because of the nature of subatomic particles, they're spinning both ways at the same time, which doesn't make sense in the macro scale. So like our universe has two basic concepts to explain how things work. We have two main theories. We have special relativity, which is Einstein. So that'd be like speed of light, general relativity, the
gravity,
the laws of motion, gravity, the forces of nature and stuff. Well, gravity is the one thing that kind of doesn't fit with quantum mechanics. The other forces make sense. So you have the strong nuclear force, you have the weak nuclear force, you have the electromagnetic force,
besides
and
Einstein's
then you have gravity.
Besides Einstein's theory, what is there?
The other theory is quantum mechanics. So Einstein's special relativity is the laws that govern the macro scale of the universe. Pretty much anything bigger than a subatomic particle. So, like if you have, like two balls and you hit one ball with another, you know that
like one of those office things that you see on desks.
Well, you know that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that governs like the big. But that doesn't apply to subatomic particles.
Micro.
Yeah. So every like subatomic particle is in superposition, which means that it's like positive and negative at the same time until you measure it, and then it's forced to choose one or the other. And because of quantum probability, you can't guess which way that's going to go. That's like Schrodinger's cat.
So it's kind of like, it's kind of like if you don't look at it, it does whatever it wants.
Exactly.
And the second you look at it is when it starts obeying the laws.
Basically, at the quantum scale, like just to sum all of this crazy stuff up into one sentence, is at its very smallest base, the universe is ultimately random. And we don't know about whatever it's doing until we measure it. That's basically how it comes out. And the current goal of science is to marry the two theories and have one single unified theory. That's called the theory of everything, and that's something that like Stephen Hawking was working his whole life to try and figure out how to marry special relativity with quantum mechanics, put them together to where we could have basically one law that explains everything that happens in the universe. And if we could find that kind of like holy grail of science.
Do you think that's what the purpose of the simulation is?
What do you mean, to try and discover that sort of thing? I don't know. Like, I mean, we're talking about...
Or maybe to see what led us there?
Yeah, possibly.
Maybe we've discovered it and we're trying to see what got us there?
You asked why would they make a simulation that would cause us to suffer and not create some sort of utopia like what the Matrix said that the supercomputers tried the first time. Like, my personal opinion is that whatever top reality that is, that's how it is or was for that top reality. And
so basically we are a playback.
Yeah, like ancestor simulations. Like, so currently, like if you're talking about like climate change, we use a lot of computer models to determine what effects it's going to have on the planet in, given years. We put in a bunch of variables and then we just let the computer kind of like play that for the future, like a forecast, like a weather forecast. But, if we have such a powerful computer, what would stop us from being able to simulate the past and things that happened in the past? Wouldn't you like to know what, how the French Revolution happened in real time, watching it on a screen or something?
That would be interesting.
Or something like that. Yeah, like seeing how your ancestors would have reacted to different situations, like you said, with alternate histories and stuff. It would be advantageous for a group of people to have more insight, to be able to see, like learn more about human nature without being unethical and using, I guess, real people.
Or manipulating history itself.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you have a powerful enough computer, I think it's self-evident that the people in the simulation would be self-aware, because
But what happens if something happens to the top reality? What happens if some calamity befalls them?
I don't know. Would the simulation keep going? Would we just be shut off? Would it even matter? Would you even perceive that? I mean, if everything just went black right now, you wouldn't know any different. You know what I mean? Like it's...
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Because that's kind of like with my views of death. My personal opinion is like when we die, it's just kind of like shutting a TV off.
So Linkin Park had it right.
What?
In the end,
it doesn't
even matter.
Well, I think that's kind of like an abject version of like nihilism. I I kind of like steer towards a more optimistic nihilism approach, which is like,
why? What's the point? If none of this matters, if we are a simulation, if we aren't real.
Well, I'm separating myself from the simulation hypothesis for a second, just to say, like, with optimistic nihilism, like assuming that we are the top reality, let's say.
Yeah.
So assuming America. That we're the big daddies, okay? Mm-hmm. It's still advantageous to be a good Samaritan and help other people and help further humanity, because in the end, that's like our evolutionary goal is to propagate the species, like keep progressing. So, I mean, if we're talking about
the highest evolved life form,
yeah, or become the most highly evolved altruistic life form, in my opinion, I think that hopefully someday we will be able to be so advanced that we don't have to fight over resources
I don't know.
Anymore.
Everything shows us that the most highly intelligent life form is usually cold and merciless.
Oh, that's in fiction, though. That's just our current perception of this. We're talking thousands of years in the future, possibly millions of years.
Yeah, but
we could be a completely different species at that point.
I don't know if morals would matter.
I mean, maybe not. We might be like Vulcans or something, like completely logic-driven. But, I mean, Vulcans are still altruistic, you know? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That's like... One. Yeah. Or is that what he says, the one?
No, the full quote is what we just said. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah.
Or the one.
As uttered by...
Spock.
Yeah, Spock in The Wrath of Khan.
Mm-hmm.
Best Star Trek movie ever.
Yeah. Well... Actually, lately I've been thinking about...
I like First Contact.
Yeah, First Contact is what I was about to say. I think First Contact's my favorite.
Really?
Yeah, there's just some... I think what it is about First Contact is it's that whole parallel to Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And that speech he gives about when they came, we retreated. When they did this, we drew back. We draw the line here, this far, no farther. And like that whole speech he gives, like, yeah. Oh, it really gets me every time. Gives me goosebumps.
But you know, like... Talking about quantum mechanics and like simulation theory, there is this concept that, you know, just like a computer code, you write laws into a computer. You say you can do this, you can't do this, all that sort of thing. Our reality has that sort of stuff. You can't outpace the speed of light. The speed of light is the universe's speed limit. Maybe why is it 182,000 or
maybe
million
that's how they keep the simulation
miles
in
per
check?
second?
Is what you're saying? That by giving us certain rules and laws of
and
physics
limitations,
and nature, quote unquote, it helps to keep the simulation from just going haywire.
Possibly. Like currently, I don't think there's anything smaller than a Planck length. Like below that amount, our concept of physics completely breaks down. Yeah. That's why like we can trace back the Big Bang. We can reverse like the expansion of the universe to such a tiny amount where it's literally billionths of a second after the initial expansion. Because you know they say the Big Bang, it wasn't an explosion. It was kind of like explosive expansion.
So it wasn't God farting.
No. But we can trace it back to the smallest amount, but we can't get past that Planck length. When the universe is smaller than that amount, the physics just breaks down. It doesn't make any sense anymore. So that could be considered possibly a limitation of the simulation that we're living in. Maybe there's a reason why you can't go faster than the speed of light, because it just breaks the bounds of the computer program that we're locked in, basically.
That makes sense.
And, you know, if you talk about the size of the universe, like currently...
Oh, yeah, talk about the planet.
What?
The planet they found with that was just like Earth, but a little bit bigger.
Oh, yeah.
So it had twice the gravity.
This has nothing to do with simulation hypothesis, but
I thought it was related.
No, sorry. It has nothing to do with it. No, I was listening to Stuff You Should Know. They're currently my favorite podcast.
What? You mean the J.R. and Billy Show isn't your favorite podcast?
It can't be my favorite podcast. I'm on it, but no,
it's my favorite.
Stuff
podcast.
You Should Know is my favorite podcast right now, and they just talk about different topics. You know, they basically how stuff works. That's and they talked about exoplanets and everything, and they talked about this planet that they found that was kind of Earth-sized. It was 12% larger in mass than the Earth, and therefore on that planet it would be roughly double the gravity of our planet. So like if we could
colonized it,
if we could have colonized it, basically there'd be like superhuman people because they said it's possible.
On their Earth, they would be normal.
Well, yeah.
But when they came back to visit after a generation of two,
just a while. I mean, your body would adapt to living on that planet eventually.
Yes, but what I'm saying is in a generation or two, they come back to visit Earth 1, we'll call it. It would basically be like original Superman.
It would be like walking on the moon.
They'd be two times stronger. They'd be able to leap like half of a football field.
Well, I think the moon is half of the mass, roughly half the mass of the Earth. So it'd be kind of like that, really.
They'd be stronger, faster, better.
They'd be bunny hopping all over the place. Just doing, doing.
They couldn't compete in our sports, though. Like, think about it. Like, if we had Earth 2 and they were twice as strong as us, twice as fast, able to do, sports would change completely. Like, we would, it'd be cool to watch them play on Earth, but it would have to be like an Earth 2 team versus another Earth 2 team. Otherwise, we'd just get creamed.
That'd be like what Joe Rogan said about, like using like steroids in sports. He's like, no, just let them use steroids. We'll have a whole separate division where they're like coked up, like amped up people and see the literal limits of what humans can do.
That'd be kind of cool.
It would be.
Some guy hit a baseball to the moon. Like,
I don't think you could hit it to the escape velocity.
If it was Earth 2 person, maybe they could.
Yeah, if
they'd be twice as strong as us.
And give them steroids.
So you want to create like this race that would clearly come back to conquer Earth 1.
Yeah.
We're not talking about a peaceful coexistence. We're talking about Earth 2 has decided we want both planets.
But the whole point of going to Earth 2 is because Earth 1 is pretty much unsustainable. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to be able to be like Superman.
Yeah.
Visit a planet where you can leap and almost fly and be stronger and faster and better than you are.
Yeah. It'd be pretty dope. But you would eventually readapt, so you wouldn't be able to stay here.
No, that's why this would become a vacation planet. Oh. Like, you come here for like a week and you live out your superhero fantasy and then you go home.
They have one of those, those businesses that let you break shit. They'll just have that for the Earth 2 people to come and like punch through a brick wall.
That'd be kind of cool.
But going back to what we were saying about the quantum, if you reverse that and you talk about like the large, so the universe right now is, the observable universe is roughly 14 billion years across. And that correlates to the age of the universe. But we don't currently know if, because the speed of light is what it is, we can't physically see things that are past 14 billion light years across because that light has no way of reaching us. The space expansion is accelerating at such a rate at that distance from us that the rate of expansion of the universe is actually faster than light can travel back. So there's kind of like this curtain that you can't see across. There will be no way that you can see across this ever. So with us having a finite viewing space of the universe, I mean, the universe could be 100 billion light years across. We don't know how big the actual universe is.
Does that mean that the quantum realm, like in the Marvel movies, could exist? Where there's like a whole nother universe within ours?
I don't really think that.
I mean, would that work with the simulation of like...
But see, like, I don't know if like intelligent life would be that sort of thing. But at the same time, our concept of intelligent life is like carbon-based life forms, following laws of evolution. Well, not laws, but following like the theory of evolution.
Do you think the world would fall apart if we became self-aware?
Like, I mean, we are self-aware.
Yeah, but
if we're self-aware enough to hypothesize this, then I would say we're pretty self-aware.
But like, if we could prove it for real.
Oh, if we could actually prove?
Yeah, if we proved that this is a simulation.
Yeah.
Proved it 100%. What do you think happens?
Honestly, I don't know. And believe it or not, James, there's actually some scientists that are working on, actually doing their life's work trying to prove that these arbitrary constants that govern our universe actually do change over time. And if that's possible, if that's a thing that actually exists, like, let's say like...
So if the laws of physics aren't as written in stone as we think...
Then that could be a computer adjusting to errors in the code. You know what I mean? Like, but we would have to have instruments that could see the smallest thing, but we currently have a limit to that.
Does that devalue
We currently
life,
have
though?
a limit. We can't see past a certain point.
Does it devalue life if we're not real?
I don't think so. But that's just because, like, my concept of, like, what life is the consciousness. It is the experience of it. Regardless if my physical body is real
Your
or not.
consciousness isn't real.
It's real to me. Like, what is reality, James? Like, what constitutes what reality and fiction is?
This air I'm breathing, this skin I feel, like you, like I can touch you, I can see you, I can smell you, I can feel you. Like,
but that's just like with the
real.
artificial intelligence podcast when we was talking about, having a robot become so self-aware. What's the difference between a self-aware robot and
they're
us?
not human.
Well, neither is a dog, but you would say that most animals have a certain level of self-awareness. They have an instinct to survive. They understand that they exist and that they're...
Yeah, but they can't understand their mortality.
I don't know. I think animals are a little more self-aware than you give them credit for.
Maybe.
I mean, like, dolphins, they have a very sophisticated language that they talk to each other. So sophisticated, in fact, that we can't even decipher the way that they speak to each other. They have a completely different way that their brain perceives what reality is.
But going back to AI,
but
once we transfer consciousness, is it still us? It's the same thing with teleportation. Like,
are you talking about like artificial immortality?
Yeah, if it's a copy, is it really you?
I think that the physical biological version of ourselves would die, but I think that if you're talking about just existence in general, the fact that AI version of yourself could still learn and grow and experience things as a artificial brain, you can't say that artificial brain doesn't exist just as much as your brain existed while you were alive.
I don't know if I would continue to have a will to live if it was proven to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that I wasn't real. I don't know if I would feel that it's worth everything I've been through.
So let's throw this to the side and just talk about like religion.
Okay.
So most of human history, we've kind of reasoned in a way that there has to be some sort of like designer. So most cultures, I think virtually all cultures have pretty much assumed, because of all of this sophistication around us, all this diversity.
Yes, most cultures have some kind of creation.
Or a god, like a creator.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the difference between a more advanced human civilization or an advanced alien civilization making a simulation that involves us self-aware code in a computer versus a god that spews forth the universe? What's the difference between making a simulation that's self-aware and making a universe that's self-aware? It's
because God
virtually the same thing.
Because God is better than all of it. The whole idea is that God is benevolent, loving, is like all. You talked about altruistic.
There's arguments that kind of like refute the idea that God could be omnibenevolent, omnipresent.
I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying that the idea behind God would be that he is a being that is perfect, beyond human understanding, beyond any kind of understanding.
But who's to say that if the great filters don't wipe us out before we get to a certain point, who's to say that evolution wouldn't progress our brain power to be something of a god? What is a god, James? I mean, what is a god if not something more than what we are right now? Like if you met the Superman, like Friedrich Nietzsche, he wrote about the Superman. Like if a person who was ultimately better than you in every possible way, he would be a god to you, because currently there's nothing better than us on this planet right now. If you're talking about intelligence, ingenuity, progression, like all of that sort of stuff, take that to the nth degree, like thousands of years, millions of years in the future, when we evolve into something that could perceive reality in a completely different way.
That's Satan talking, though.
No,
that's what the figure of Satan would want us to think, is that we are the
if you're of the religious type, then yeah, of course you would think that, because you don't want to think that a human could possibly do that, because what's stopping us from doing it right now? I think it's literally the limitations of our brains perceiving the reality. I think if the simulation hypothesis is real, I think the thing that's really inhibiting us from seeing what it truly is the limitations of our brains. Like, we perceive reality in the way that it is because that's how our senses react with the environment around us. If they reacted in a slightly different way, we would have a completely different perception of what reality is. Say, like, what if we like evolved to eat rocks or something? We thought rocks were delicious and like fish were disgusting or something. Like, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Our complete perception of reality would be different.
So let me put it to you. If they proved the simulation theory 100%, would it change how you live or how you view life?
I don't think so.
Wow.
And I think
that's okay. It's just like I said, I don't think I would have the desire to continue on if I knew for a fact that I wasn't real and that I didn't really matter because I don't exist. I'm not real. It would take so much desire. It would take the desire to live away. There would be no point to me.
Well, I mean, we was watching some videos before recording this. We watched Elon Musk talk about his views on the simulation hypothesis. He thinks it's incredibly likely. And that's like kind of like people who think that this is a possibility also think that it's like a 99.99999 indefinite chance that we're in one of the simulations instead of in the base reality. So if the simulation hypothesis is true, it's incredibly, astronomically unlikely that you're in the top reality that creates the simulation. And Elon Musk, even in that interview, said that it would be sort of comforting to know that you're in the simulation and not the top reality, because that would mean that there was a civilization that made it through all the great filters, and it shows that it is possible to not get wiped out by an asteroid or
climate change or presidents or dictators,
nuclear,
or things like that.
Nuclear war, that kind of stuff. Like there's all these filters that.
Well, I suppose so. I don't know. I just don't think I want to be somebody's history project.
Oh man, that would be crazy. Like this is what meme culture was like in the 2010s. Let me run simulation B.
Like, oh man.
When Pepe the Frog didn't get turned into a hate symbol.
I don't. It's funny, but it's at the same time, I really don't think I wouldn't want to continue on if it was real. Do you think it's real? Do you think we're in a simulation?
I think it's an interesting thought experiment. I don't think it's real.
I hope not. I mean, I know it's comforting to a degree, but again, it would just take away reality to me. It would make me feel pointless.
My personal idea about it is I think that the simulation hypothesis is not true. Mm-hmm. If you take all of the premises of this logical argument, it follows that we're in a simulation. And that's the kind of paradox that we have here. We have all of these things that we suppose to be true. The idea that, we have Moore's law, which Moore's law states that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles every 2 years, though the cost of computers is halved. And pretty much so far that's held up to be true. If you notice, and nowadays, you don't have to reinvent the hammer every single time you come up with a new invention. You build yourself off of the shoulders of people who invented before you. You improve their ideas, you make them better.
Yeah, but to turn this into gaming for a second, that doesn't mean we don't have to make it able to play the previous generation stuff either.
But it could definitely be advantageous for our survival in the future. Like
to not be able to go back?
You could be, you could say you're facing, say you're the top reality and you're this advanced civilization and you're facing some sort of calamity that you don't know how you could fix. Maybe it would be advantageous to show how maybe it's possible to fix it by running infinite simulations, kind of like Doctor Strange in Endgame.
Oh, being able to see all the different realities of
and see what's the best
let's get
option
them to this
for us.
point this way. Let's get them to this point that way. Let's get them to this point this way.
Yeah. And if we take the simulation hypothesis to be true, but
there is an end to it. Like if the simulation hypothesis is real, there is
there has to be a top reality of some sort. Even if you want to take the religious route and say it's like an omnibenevolent creator that's doing it for our own good or something, even if you want to say that, it doesn't mean that the simulation hypothesis can be disproven. It's something that can't be proven. Can be disproven. It's not really worthy of debate. I don't think that you can really take a stance and say, I think it's true, I think it's not true. You can have your beliefs or whatever, but nobody can say definitively that, yes, it's true or no, it's not.
So if it can be neither proven nor disproven, it's really not worth believing in or debating.
Yeah, it's not worthy of debate. I think it's interesting to think about. It's a good thought experiment.
It is. It does
armchair philosophy. That's what they call that.
Do you think that all this armchair philosophy is a distraction for the masses?
What do you mean?
Like, do you think that the reason why we have scientists and philosophers and stuff is to distract us from our reality? Like, do you think they want us talking about this instead of realizing that, hey, government doesn't work right? Why? Healthcare, it shouldn't be $3,000 for an ambulance ride in an emergency situation.
I think you're kind of thinking like Karl Marx here. Not as a communist, but, the idea that religion is the opiate of the masses. The idea that religion and philosophy
See, I feel like so many people aren't religious anymore. I think science and philosophy may be the new opiate.
Like, I think that science, like a lot of people equate science to like a new form of like a religion. See, the difference between science... No, the difference between science and religion is religion lays down dogma. And it says that this is something that's true that you have to take as fact. Whereas science is something where we say, due to our current understanding of the way things are going right now, the way we understand the universe right now, this is how things work. But it's always moldable. It can be changed. If we find new evidence, it can be changed.
Except for the laws you talked about at the beginning.
I mean, if you took a religion, like say somebody found indisputable proof that this is the body of Jesus Christ, even though in Christianity he resurrected bodily, like there is no body. Do you really think that religion would change its views and say, yeah, well, I guess we got the resurrection part wrong in our... No, they wouldn't. They would say, that's a fraud. That's not true. It'd be like, that's a conspiracy or something.
Well, because you can't prove that it isn't.
It's the same thing like we had indisputable proof. Like there was like a plaque on his body that says, this is Jesus of Nazareth, who lived between this time and this time, killed by Pontius Pilate. Like, say, like a decree or something like on this body. Like proving that this was him. They even do like DNA tests and be like, hey, he's related to so-and-so and so-and-so. I don't know.
I think some religions would change. I don't know.
There would probably be sects that would change. Maybe like a Church of Science or something.
I think a lot of religions would change. I really do. I don't know if every branch, I don't know if every offshoot would adopt it, but I think like main heads of religion would acknowledge, like look at the Pope now. I think the Pope is making new decisions when it comes to like LGBTQ matters and all these other different things that before were never talked about or never accepted for change.
I think part of that is to stay relevant in a culture that is currently railing against those ideas that they held for religion. Thousands of years.
I think science is a religion because it also says anyone who criticizes science is stupid. Or ignorant.
No, I don't think it's criticizing science. I think it's rejecting the overwhelming evidence, not proving, because science is not something that can be proven.
But a lot of, science cannot be proven nor disproven.
No.
Some of it can be.
You're taking my words and twisting them. What I'm saying is science is not like a proven thing. Like, that's why it's called the theory of evolution. A theory is a bunch of like different hypotheses that are experimented and they're proven to be consistent. Over time, you gather all of this evidence and it's all consistent.
But it's still a theory of evolution, even to this day.
Yeah, but you're taking the word theory and you're perverting it.
No, I'm not. I'm saying if it stays a theory for long enough and it can't be proven or disproven, doesn't most of science end up being worthless of debate because it can't be proven or disproven?
No, that's not what I'm talking about. So before modern science, like before, like say Charles Darwin, they used to find these mathematical laws that govern that's why like you have the law of thermodynamics. It's proven that like this is always true no matter what the circumstance. The way that evolution works, this is totally going off a tangent, but what I'm saying is like they postulate all of these different things that would be consistent with the idea of evolution and they've proven it. So say, Charles Darwin found a orchid on the Galapagos Islands that had a very long stem. Bugs and stuff couldn't have repollinated that. It had to have some sort of animal that was perfectly adapted to this particular flower that would cause it to be able to pollinate. Otherwise, the flower wouldn't be able to live. And they found over 100 years later a type of bird that has a long enough beak to actually, and they've witnessed it doing this. So they know that Charles Darwin's prediction that there would be an animal that's perfectly suited for this flower.
But if there's so much proof, then why does it stay a theory?
Well, see, that's where you come to scientific consensus. So the theory of evolution is like the scientific community peer-reviewed all of this data, and they all agree that The theory of evolution is currently our best understanding of how biology works now. It could change in the future. There's some, like, who knows? We could come across some sort of discovery that could completely wipe all of that clean, and we'll have to come up with some other way to fit those experiments that we determined to be true to fit with this new idea, because things have to stay consistent.
No, I think I disagree. I think science is the new opiate of the masses, man. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I think people are putting as much focus on science as they did on religion.
Yeah, I agree with that notion.
I think they're using it as a crutch.
Well, yeah, and every generation does. Every generation falls on that crutch of whatever their current scientific understanding is. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It can be a bad thing. I mean, look at the end of the 19th century. People were saying, oh, there's science. It was very dubious science, showing that African American people's skulls were shaped different. Therefore, they're dumber than us. And at the time, people were like, science shows that this race is dumber than us. And then we've proven later that that's not true at all, actually. And, you know, something else I learned, this is totally another tangent. You know the reason why there's a Southern stereotype of us being like dumb and, you know, kind of slow and lazy and stuff? That was actually because of the hookworm. We didn't know that in the South, you know, people a lot of times didn't have shoes. They would get hookworms in them, and it causes your body to kind of shut down in a very significant way and kind of be mentally impaired in a way.
So you're saying
these worms would infect people's
generation of Southern hookworm victims.
Exactly. And they had to treat all of these hookworm people, and like eventually now in this day and age, we wear shoes. I mean, you can still get hookworms today, but they're easily treated. You know, you can get rid of them super easy. But back then, they didn't even know that there were worms in them that were causing this.
You're about to go, there were worms in them there hills. Yeah. You're about to say there were worms in them there hills.
But I think, you know, if you want to be scientifically virtuous, you need to take all of the information that you have available to you at the time to give you the best understanding of reality. And while it may be wrong, that's all the information you have to work with.
Yeah.
Therefore, you do with it what you have. Like right now, there's a lot of debate about climate science. 97% of the scientific community is that humans cause climate change.
What makes the holdout? Why is the 3 or 4% still
actually
holding out?
The 3% is kind of dubious too, because a lot of climate deniers use that 3% because they don't count papers that explicitly leave out humans cause climate change. And some scientific papers are published with assuming that you already know that and don't mention it in the paper, so they'll add that to their list of, oh, well, this one doesn't say that humans cause climate change, therefore this person doesn't agree.
So people aren't.
So there's it's probably a lot more than 97%. Is no one
actually denying climate change? It's just they're denying that people cause climate change?
Oh, no. I mean, I think there's definitely scientists out there that say that climate change isn't a thing, but the scientific consensus with all the information that we have right now
is that it is a thing.
It is a thing, and it's pretty self-evident in my opinion. And you know, I used to be a climate denier. In fact, when I was in college, a college freshman in my speech class, like I gave like speeches about how I thought that it was alarmism. It was this kind of like, not really a conspiracy, but just the idea that in order to get people to live more sustainable, like energy-wise lives, we need to scare them into thinking that climate change is a thing.
As Greta would say, how dare you? You are robbing the future.
Yeah, so like back then I used to think, well, it's not bad to not litter, or it's not bad to invest in electric cars and stuff. Like we should do that because we love our planet. Like we don't want litter everywhere. We don't want smog in our skies, but I didn't think that, you know, at the time I didn't think that it would cause massive, you know, climate change.
Titanic 2 was hit by a typhoon instead of an iceberg.
But the situation, and we're way off topic. We're on a big tangent right now. Sorry about this, but from what I've looked at the numbers that I've seen, like it shows that human action causes way more greenhouse gases than even volcanoes erupting. A lot of people use volcanoes as
well, okay.
But I mean,
I'm just saying,
just over time too. We've been doing this since the Industrial Revolution. Been putting these things in the atmosphere.
To get back to the point a little bit, I feel like we need to be careful with all these theories and theorizing, and because I do feel like it is an opiate. Like, I feel like we can distract ourselves from the important things by discussing.
See, like, in my opinion, I feel like it sheds more light on the things that we need to worry about. Like, science shows us, hey, you know what? Statistically, you're not really equal, even though the law says you are. And people like to spout off that, African American people get treated the exact same from law enforcement as white people. But, look at the science, the statistics say, not really. And I'm not saying that like a police officer is consciously trying to be racist. It's just something that's built into our culture so long, something that we hold on to, that's what the concept of systemic racism comes from, is these statistics that's showing that's, black people kind of get the shit end of the stick when it comes to law enforcement, And I mean, and we see videos every day of like people calling the cops on people getting, barbecues and stuff. We're way off of simulation hypothesis.
Well, that's because I don't like thinking about it, honestly. Because like really? I said, maybe it's my own mental deficiencies. Maybe it's whatever chemical balance I have in myself. But I honestly cannot comprehend, understand, or accept the idea that I am not real.
Well, I mean, okay. I agree with you on that. But at the same time, James, say we are the top reality, we still don't have any answers. We still don't have any answers about what happens after we die or what existence truly means.
But for some reason, that doesn't really bother me.
Like, does it mean anything?
Like, once I die, that's fine. But
yeah.
I want to at least feel that I am real and truly living and alive until I die.
I keep saying this, James, though, but what's the difference? What's the difference? If the simulation is so real that you can't tell the difference, what is the difference between living a real life and a simulated life?
It's not, it's just emotional. It's not logical. It's the difference between I feel like a real, true, living, breathing being.
Yeah.
And being code on some screen.
Yeah.
That doesn't amount to anything or mean anything. It's just personal. It's just, like I said, like it could be just me personally, and that's why I can't accept it.
Well, you feel like life has a meaning of some sort.
I think overall it will.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure what it'll all add up to, but I'm sure that at some point there will be a reason for us to have existed.
Do you have a postulated like idea of what a meaning of life would be? James, enlighten me. What is the meaning of life?
42. That's the meaning of life. That's the meaning of life, the universe, everything we know. 42. No.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes. But I don't know. Maybe there's not an overall point. Maybe the point of life will be what we make it.
Yeah.
Maybe let's go with evolution being real.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's up because we won the evolution lottery, so to speak. Because we became the top beings, maybe it's up to us to make something of life.
Yeah.
Maybe because we're what got the random chance to succeed and build, it's up to us to build something amazing.
So like in a
Star
way,
Trekian future where we are peaceful, a utopian-ish society where we explore the universe.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much the overall goal for humanity. I'm saying personally.
What does it mean? What is the meaning of life for me personally?
Yeah, like your personal existence, like my dad. Like, he said when I was born, like he realized what his true purpose was. And it was to raise me. And in a sort of way, if you're thinking about evolution, that's kind of built into our brains. If you accept evolution, it's kind of like built into our brains. We need to propagate and we need to protect our offspring and make sure that they succeed because that's our genetic information.
I mean, that's why you have people who give babies up for adoption.
They're also kind of dumb.
Abuse their children.
So maybe they don't have the best genes.
Okay, Hitler. All right, let's get to the concentration camps for people who are not genetically superior. Like, all right, whoa there. At this time, J-Rim would like to separate himself from the J-Rim and the show's views and points brought up by Ryan.
I am not talking about eugenics, but
it kind of sounds like you are.
Whatever.
But no, for me personally, I think the point of life is to maybe leave humanity better than when I got here.
Yeah.
Like maybe make some impact on someone who makes an impact on someone else who makes... I very much think that the purpose of life is to be a ripple in the pond.
Yeah.
I think that my life, if I live it correctly...
Or if you're a string theorist, a vibration of a string. That.
Yeah, I would like to believe that what the meaning of my life is that the people who I influence and affect, positively or negatively, depending on the decisions I make, will then go on to affect others, and overall, it will be a
net positive.
A net positive.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I think that should be everyone's purpose of life, is to end up with a brotherhood of mankind, where we end up being the altruistic utopian race.
Yeah. See, I agree with that. Like that's you've pretty much summed up what I was going to say. But I would also say, that kind of shows like our current views on the way that our, especially with climate change, the way things are going now. It seems like, ancient times, we were taught, I mean, even up until this century too, we were taught, man has dominion over the earth. He can use all of the things but we can't clear cut forests. That's not going to help us in the future. You can't just keep doing that. Otherwise you're going to run out of trees.
Team trees, everybody. We got to get them to 20 million.
And that's why, now there's these forestry services that are, made to where we make this sustainable. Like we don't log more than we
But here's the thing. We also have laws in our government that state businesses that have to cut forests have to plant 2 or whatever it is trees in its place.
Yeah.
Like for every one you cut, you have to plant 2 or whatever.
It makes sense because we're going to be able to harvest that in the future. We're, looking forward,
Well, yes, but that just goes to my theory of we want to be an altruistic,
like, shepherd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to make the place better than we left it.
Yeah.
I think everyone has the potential.
But wouldn't it be interesting, say, like, we get a quantum computer of some sort, something that's so powerful it can simulate another history. What if we just wanted to see how different it would be if we held these ideas in ancient times? Or if we held these ideas before the invention of the gas-powered car. Before gas-powered cars, electric cars were the way to go. They had electric cars before gas-powered cars, but because of the price of oil plummeting so far down, once we created better drilling techniques and stuff, oil got so cheap where it was like, it's actually economically viable to use gas instead of electric. What if we, instead of doing that, what if we invested more in learning,
we would have to alter,
how to harvest electricity?
We would have to alter our understanding. We would have to give them foresight that they wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
Because back then they didn't. I don't know if they realized that oil was a finite resource.
It would require some tinkering, definitely. Like if you.
I mean, it goes back to the simulations theory. It would be interesting to see a history of mankind play out where they realized that these things would be a finite resource, like oil.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to go back and have them realize way earlier than they did that we could go to oil because it's cheaper, but eventually we're going to run out. We need to keep working with renewable resources and energies.
Yeah.
I think we would get to a utopia a lot. I bet we'd be in a utopian. You know what? I bet we'd be a lot closer to the Back to the Future 2 2015.
Yeah.
If we could meddle like that with the past and have them have the foresight.
Yeah.
It's like there was a TikTok I saw that's really funny talking about Crocs. For those of you who don't know, Crocs is like the only brand of shoe I wear. I wear it year round. It's the best. It's the most comfortable shoe. But this TikTok was this guy going, what if we went back and gave the Vikings Crocs? They'd have been unstoppable. They were only stopped because their feet hurt and they couldn't continue pillaging and raping and like destroying every other civilization. But like imagine if we went back and gave our ancestors knowledge that we have today. Imagine if we gave them computers in 1930, like computers we have today.
Yeah.
And taught them how they work.
Just say we created a simulation where oil doesn't exist. There is no oil to harvest. You have to find another way to progress.
Then we would have to make it where there were no dinosaurs.
I mean, that's easy. Sure. Why not?
Because then the world would not be
We're
cool.
talking about something that could be infinite simulations. You know, if you're talking about like multiverse theory, that's the idea that there's infinite multiple universes, all, you know, slightly different from the next. And, you know, we're probably in the 0.0000001% of universes that actually have something like us.
Yeah, but
see, it's infinite. So there's an infinite version of us.
That means there's a version of me that's better off.
Because if you take an infinite number and you divide it in half, you still have infinity. Isn't that not crazy to think about? Like mathematically, if you have infinity and you divide it in half, you still have infinity. That's a paradox in and of itself. So even if, you know, there's infinite multiverses where, you know, the vast majority of that infinity is, you know, nothing or something that couldn't even sustain life because the laws of physics in those universes don't even make sense enough to be able to harbor life, the small amount that does still equates to an infinity amount of universes where we exist. All could be slightly different. Incredibly different. Like one subatomic particle spinning in opposite direction from all the other ones.
Could change
otherwise an identical
universe. It's like the short story where the person went back to dinosaur times and stepped on a butterfly, and when they went back to their present, like the world was in ruins, like they had literally destroyed humans as they knew them.
It's a really interesting topic just because it really frames the flux that we go through in the world, that everything is constantly changing and morphing like a flowing river. It's constantly changing, you know, into something else. So and there's no way to really predict which way it'll go.
So let's wrap this up with one last thought.
Yeah.
If we get to the point where we create artificial reality, that you can't tell the difference between being in that reality and being in ours, would you live in it? Would you create your own reality to live in?
Would I be Cypher in the Matrix and be like, I want to eat tasty steak again?
Yeah, would you choose to live in a reality that you control?
Of course. Why not?
I wonder how you would keep the physical body going while you were living. I guess you would end up just being able to put your consciousness in the simulation.
In a computer, yeah. Like your physical body would still die. This is going back to our artificial intelligence episode.
But it would be very tempting to put our... I have to admit, even though the things I've said may sound like I would be totally against it, I would find it very tempting to create a universe where everything is perfect for me and then put myself in it.
Well, that's even like the movie Inception, you know, those people who are always living in the dream world because they can control it.
It would be very tempting.
It'd be tempting to live out your days.
Imagine being able to live in a universe where you are basically the ruler.
Well, and also because, you know, you could live, you know, if you were just asleep for 8 hours, you'd be able to live years in a dream world in that universe. Like if we take Inception as something. I mean, so yeah, it would be tempting to live in a simulation if you could create a simulation and like upload your consciousness into it. It would even be interesting if you had the computing power to make a computer that could simulate you and give it some sort of self-awareness to act in its own way. Just to watch.
Be able to watch.
Just to be able to watch.
Kind of like the Truman Show almost, being able to watch a person.
Yeah.
And control their decisions by voting or something.
Think about that next time you're diddling your diddly.
Oh.
Jesus ain't watching you. Your future self is watching you.
Or an alternate you is watching.
Oh, God.
criticizing your technique. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he uses
his left hand.
Doesn't even know that his right hand is way better.
You know what I heard recently is that the idea that we have a dominant hand.
You just sit on one hand and let it go numb so that it's like a stranger?
No. I was, it's actually, like the whole idea of like having a dominant hand is kind of arbitrary. Like at any time you can train yourself to use the other one.
I don't know if that would.
There was a tennis player who is naturally right-handed. His coach taught him to use his left hand because it gives you an advantage.
Write?
It gives you an advantage.
Was he able to write with both hands or just play tennis with both hands? Because to me, there's a difference between like being able to play a sport.
If somebody cut off your right hand right now, you would have to learn how to use your left hand or whatever you write with. You write with.
No, you said right hand. I'm making you stick to that. Bye. Well, good thing I'm left-handed. I win.
We're both left-handed. That's weird.
That is weird. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Well,
that makes us more intelligent, right?
I think so.
Maybe.
I mean, right-handed, no.
This could be a total
left-handed
clusterfuck of an episode if you don't If you don't
Because
understand...
left-handed people are supposed to be like, it's a sign of the devil or something, remember?
Yeah.
That's like a superstition, like left-handed people, right-handed people, you sit on the right hand of God. In the Bible, it talks about being on the right hand of God.
Yeah, well,
So
left-handed
people
was called sinistrality.
Yeah.
So, in this fashion, I'm going to end this episode by telling you the simulation hypothesis.
Wait.
Because we've just been really postulating all of this
Whoop.
We're
Now,
going back in time.
for a glitch in the Matrix. To really bring it back to the beginning, here's a black cat deja vu.
Yeah. So Nick Bostrom was the guy who came up with this concept of the simulation hypothesis. And this is pretty much his words. So I'm just going to read it from Wikipedia. But this is Nick Bostrom's hypothesis. He says, many works of science fiction, as well as some forecasts by serious technologists and futurologists, predict that enormous amounts of computing power will be available in the future. This is going back to Moore's law, by the way, what we was talking about, the technology is like doubling itself every 2 years. So let us suppose for a moment that these predictions are correct. One thing that later generations might do with their super powerful computers is run detailed simulations of their forebears, ancestors, or people like their ancestors. Because their computers would be so powerful, they could run a great many such simulations. Suppose that these simulated people are conscious, as they would be if the simulations were sufficiently fine-grained and if a certain quite widely accepted position in the philosophy of mind is correct. Then it would be the case that the vast majority of minds like ours do not belong to the original race, but rather to the people simulated by the advanced descendants of an original race.
But what's his conclusion?
So, yeah, his conclusion says it is then possible to argue that if this were the case, we would be rational to think that we are likely among the simulated minds rather than among the original biological ones. Therefore, if we don't think that we are currently living in a computer simulation, we are not entitled to believe that we will have descendants who will run lots of such simulation of their forebears. That's what I was saying.
So if we don't believe in it, then we'll never get that. We'll never get to that reality, alternate reality, or virtual reality.
Yeah, because if we accept that it's possible, then that means that the very vast
if we achieve it, then that means we might have already achieved it.
Exactly, and it's very, very likely that we have.
So actually,
yeah,
if we achieve that virtual reality, that will be the proof.
Yeah, if we're able to prove that we live in a simulation, that
will be the proof that we live in a simulation.
Yeah.
If we are able to create virtual reality,
yeah,
that is that detailed and that perfect, then that will be proof that it's been done.
Yeah.
Oh man, I hope we don't. I'm saying I hope we don't get there. I really do.
Well, we hope that we blowed your minds today, people. If you want to, you can check out our YouTube channel. Check out the link in the description on whatever you're listening to us on. If you want to listen to us, you can listen to us on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Check out our Facebook page, which is at JRamandBillyPod. You can also follow us on Twitter, even though I haven't been tweeting anything lately. But
I haven't either.
You can tweet us at JRamandBillyPod. Check us out on Facebook. Give us a like. Let us know what you think about the simulation hypothesis. And if you have any other ideas about things that we can talk about in the future, definitely let us know.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so, to wrap it up, this was J-Ram.
And this is Billy.
And wow, that was deep.